Have you ever stopped to think about the journey your food takes before it actually ends up on your plate? I mean, really think about it. It's this incredible, globe-spanning story run by these massive, complex systems that honestly most of us never even see. Well, today we're going to pull back that curtain and try to figure out who's really calling the shots.
So let's just dive right in. The huge question we're tackling, and this is all based on some fascinating research by Praveen Jha and Paris Eros, is this: who really controls the global food supply? And as you're about to see, the answer is a lot more concentrated than you'd probably guess.
Okay, so to get to the bottom of what's happening with our food, we first have to wrap our heads around this giant shift in how everything gets made these days. You can just throw out that old idea of a product being built in one factory, in one country. It doesn't work like that anymore. Welcome to the global assembly line.
Yeah, this whole setup actually has a name. It's called a Global Value System, or GVS for short. Basically, think of it like a framework where giant corporations treat the entire planet as one big factory floor. Different pieces of a single product are made all over the world, then assembled somewhere else, and finally sold, well, everywhere else.
A perfect example is the smartphone that's probably in your pocket right now. You know, the minerals for it might come from Africa, the processor from Taiwan, the screen from South Korea. All of it gets put together in China, from a design that was dreamed up in California. That wild, planet-spanning web, that's a GVS in action.
And this is a huge, huge shift. I mean, it wasn't always like this. It used to be that production was pretty much centered in one country. Now it's completely decentered. Money just flies across borders, always looking for cheaper labor or a new market to crack. The whole world has pretty much become one single playing field.
Okay, so that makes sense for electronics and cars. But what happens when you take that same global assembly line logic and you apply it to something as basic and essential as our food? Well, that's where we make the jump from the factory floor to the farm. This is what our source material calls a Global Agricultural Value System, or GAVS. It's the exact same idea, but now the network connects every single person and thing in the food chain. We're talking from the companies that design the seeds, to the farmers who plant them, to the traders who ship the harvest, all the way to the supermarket where you buy your groceries.
And inside this system, let's be real, there's a very clear hierarchy. On one side, you've got the power players, these massive transnational corporations, agribusiness giants, and big financial firms. And on the other side, you've got the people actually producing the food, millions of individual farmers and farm workers. The source article doesn't mince words. It says these two groups are stuck in highly unequal power relations.
And this chart really shows you just how concentrated that power has become. I mean, get this. After a ton of huge mergers, just three corporate giants now control over 60% of the entire global market for seeds and agricultural chemicals. We're talking Bayer Monsanto, Dow DuPont, and ChemChina Syngenta. They've essentially become the gatekeepers for the very beginning of our food chain.
So how do these systems keep expanding their control? Well, one of the most direct ways is through something the authors call a new scramble for land, and it's happening mostly across the global south. This is all about getting direct control of the most fundamental resource there is, the land itself.
The scale here is just staggering. Between the years 2012, so just 12 years, land deals covering 83.2 million hectares were made in developing countries. To put that in perspective, that's an area of land bigger than the entire country of Turkey. It's just mind-boggling.
So what's all this land being used for? Well, a big chunk is for food crops, sure. But look at this. A full third of it is for growing biofuels like oil palm and sugarcane. A lot of this stuff isn't being grown to feed local people. No, it's destined for global markets and industrial supply chains far, far away.
But here's the thing, these corporations don't always have to own the land to control what happens on it. There's a much more subtle, indirect method that puts pretty much all the risk squarely on the farmer's shoulders.
It's called contract farming. And here's how it works. A farmer agrees to grow a specific crop for a big corporate buyer. But that contract dictates, well, everything. It tells them what seeds to use, what chemicals to spray, and the exact precise quality standards that the final harvest has to meet.
Now, the really crucial part here is how all the risk gets divided up. The corporation gets to control the profitable stuff, right? They sell the seeds and then market the final product. But they avoid the big costs of actually owning the land. Meanwhile, as the source explains, the farmer has to carry almost all of the risk: bad weather, pests, a crop that just fails, And if their harvest doesn't meet those super strict corporate standards, it can just get rejected, leaving the farmer with absolutely nothing. And we're not talking about some small-scale operation. The source points to one company, Olam, that was reportedly working with 2 million individual farmers across 50 different countries. That's one single company coordinating a global network of producers that's larger than the population of some entire nations. It's just immense.
So let's step back for a second. We've got massive land deals. We've got this risky contract farming, and it's all being driven by just a handful of giant corporations. When you start to connect those dots, you begin to see a picture that isn't just about economics anymore. It's about power. And I want to be really clear here. This critical take we've been walking through comes directly from the analysis in the source article by the authors Praveen Jha and Paris Yaros. Their whole goal was to uncover these deep, structural forces that are shaping our global food system today.
And in their conclusion, they really don't pull any punches. They say, and I'm quoting here, that the dice is currently heavily loaded in favor of large corporations, and that the entire system fundamentally serves the interests of what they call generalized monopolies.
And according to them, the consequences of this system are devastating. They link it to a massive transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich, to people being forced off their land, to the disappearance of traditional ways of life, and ultimately to a system that actually weakens food security for the most vulnerable people on the planet. They go so far as to call it a modern form of imperialism.
Which of course brings us right back to where we started, but maybe now with a much clearer, if unsettling, picture. When our food travels through a system that's controlled by so few, that's designed for faraway markets, and is built on these incredibly unequal relationships, it really forces you to ask, in a global food system like this, where does the power truly lie?